Welcome to Lead Different.
Why not leadership? Why not lead different?
Welcome to Lead Different, the podcast that redefines leadership and challenges the status quo. Hosted by Daniel Dominguez, founder and CEO of Why Not Leadership. This show is your compass to becoming a better leader through the power of self-awareness. Good leaders foster teams that are engaged, empowered, and energized. Join us on this transformative journey as we equip you with the tools and insights to lead different. Get ready to challenge the ordinary and embrace self-aware leadership. This is Lead Different.
Subscribe now. Discover a new era of leadership. Lead different, because great leaders change the world.
Hello, and welcome to the show, Dan Rosaschi. It's so good to have you on.
Thank you, Dan. A pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
You know, you're one of the first guests that when I said, hey, Dan, I want to have you on the podcast, you said, hey, go listen to this other podcast of me being a guest so that I could get a sense of how you speak, what you talk about. But, you know, it wasn't necessary. We had an opportunity, Dan, to meet through the Tepeyac Leadership Institute. Our good friend Christopher Pereira introduced us. And it was interesting that you and I kind of just hit it off right away. And we've had a couple of conversations since then. We were encouraged, you know, and you guys, those of you listening, you know how these groups work. You get told, hey, catch up with the other people in the room, and you reach out to a few people. But the one guy that answered right away was Dan, and I said, okay, I'm going to follow up with him. We've had some great conversations, and the more I talked to you, Dan, the more I wanted to share your story with our listeners on the Lead Different podcast. Because you're doing something that is very necessary. You provide an essential service, but you're doing it in a way that I think is making a difference. And the other part the other reason I wanted to have you on is you wear your faith on your sleeve. It's not something that you just do on Sundays. It's something that's a part of you. And I wanted to make sure and share that story. So again, thank you for being on. Why don't you take us back a little bit, Dan? Let's, for those of you that don't know Dan Rosaschi, tell us a little bit about your background, maybe, your faith journey, and a little bit about your education and career up to now. Great. And then we'll get started.
Happy to do so. And just as a quick plug for Tepeyac Leadership, does a great job helping Catholic leaders work in the secular environment. So, working within Catholicism, sometimes when we are out in the secular world, I'm sometimes fascinated when people tell me what I believe as a Catholic, and I'm thinking that is so not true. But people have any interest in Tepeyac Leadership, I'm always happy to have that conversation with people. And they have a great conference pilgrimage done down to Our Lady of Guadalupe in October, which is also great. And as far as reaching out to you, Dan, I thought your story really resonated with me. Your military history, your care for others, your service to others, and helping them grow and work with their businesses. Some of the comments you made in our initial call, I said, this guy's the real deal. I would love to have a little more conversation with him. For myself, growing up and my leadership, I grew up as a Sunday Catholic, very Catholic since birth. Went through the whole progression. Irish Catholic mom, New York, Brooklyn mom and dad, 6 siblings, 3 brothers, 3 sisters, and very, very wholesome, awesome childhood. My dad was a great and good man. Mom is still kicking it and smarter than your average bear. And then through my career, I went to New York Maritime College, which ended me working on a tugboat for a few years in New York Harbor. I don't know how that always impacts later in life, but it was 7 men on a tugboat going up and down the northeastern seaboard for a few years. It was an interesting life. Funny thing about sales on a boat, the funny thing you see on a boat is there's 3 things you see regularly. It was Louis L'Amour novels, so Western novels, the Wall Street Journal, and the New York Post. So that was the reading material that was regularly on the boat when we'd be in and out of ports every other day or so. From there, I ended up in logical progression into commercial real estate in Manhattan. I did that for about 7 years. It's a major Shark Tank, fascinating business, a lot of knocking on doors, top floor to bottom. I don't know how they get into buildings now, but probably online, there's a lot more tenant information. We participated. We were the number 17 unsecured creditor for one of the largest bankruptcies in New York City real estate history. So that was a fascinating sequence. It was a real gut check because a significant piece of that unsecured money was mine. And then through a factoring firm, short story long, we got out for 90 cents on the dollar. So we really did fine. We were pretty much whole. It was somebody else wanted to buy our seat at the table, so we yielded our seat and got paid pretty well on that. And then through life, some life challenges, I had a son that passed away at a very young age. He's about 4 months old, and through that, it was like, I needed to retrench a lot more and have a little bit more control of my life. And so I had an opportunity to get into the financial service business, which does provide a lot of that independence. And then it was control a lot more schedule, commute dropped dramatically, much more accessible to home, much more involved in my community. Those were all very attractive components for me personally. And I did have a conversation on a corporate real estate position. And the funny thing was his interpretation was, Dan, you guys who are in real estate, you guys are cowboys. We don't want to deal with you. We want corporate guys. We don't want you to understand real estate. We'll tell you what we want you to understand. And I said, okay, because that sort of didn't even process for me. You can imagine.
Right.
Hold on. You don't want knowledge. You want someone. And meanwhile, at school, I wore a uniform. So it wasn't like I couldn't, shine my buckle and shoes and get a haircut and whatever. Not that I didn't get any demerits in my tenure, but it was a funny dichotomy for me and confirmed for me I don't belong in corporate America.
Yeah.
So the financial service business provides a lot of independence. Mm-hmm. You're helping people, provide expertise. I had a great platform, but there were little things that it just ate away at my confidence in my independence and in my offerings, because they sort of want you. They do want, and all the broker dealers do this on some level. They are steering you a little bit, and it's not blatant. It's not, but there are little things that start eating away at you. And I said, I need a much more independent model. And so a junior high school friend of mine, Mark Corrado, was I thought we were on a parallel path, but ultimately, as I've talked to you about, we were on a collision path because he had a tax and accounting firm. And he was doing some audits. And then somebody who said, well, you should try this integrated planning thing. Well, the audit business was making him a little queasy because it's not a relationship business. And I didn't even understand this originally. But when you're in the auditor's job on a corporate audits and nonprofit audits, they're there to tell you your books are clean or they're not clean. They're not there to wink at you like you are in your business where you're servicing people trying to help them, right? He can't wink at you and say, hey, you might want to try this or that to help. Right. More profitable, make it cleaner, make it more appropriate, et cetera. So, so he said, I need to get out of the audit business. It's too work intensive and not real relationship oriented. Right. So he said, let's bang out of that. So he ended up getting clients who had some great windfalls from sales of their businesses, some early hedge fund managers before they were called hedge funds. They're selling their business. They have huge dollars dropping into their accounts. And Mark would be at the conference table saying, well, nobody's taking notes. Everybody's worried about the post meeting liquid lunch. And Mark's taking notes saying, I got to go back to work. And one of the clients said to him one time, said, Mark, why aren't you handling my investments and, doing this on a more integrated basis for me? Right. Rather than just filing my taxes once a year. Yeah. And Mark said, well, I don't have that expertise. It's a pretty easy question to answer. And so, so we sort of, it percolated for a while. The AICPA, they were like, "Oh, we can't do that. You guys are accountants." And then it evolved. And they said, there's the big eight, now the big four accounting firms. We're starting to do more consulting business, and there were a lot of holes being dug underneath walls in order to facilitate to be able to do consulting and the taxes and accounting, et cetera. Not auditing, mind you. So the audit, that had to go. And the relationship side of the business really grew for Mark. I was growing and we would sort of be involved with business. If I had a tax accounting question, I'd bounce around Mark and stop by, and he was partners with Lisa Balsamo. She does a good job. And they have a funny partnership because Mark's tremendously creative, and Lisa does a great job of making sure he doesn't get too creative.
So all of us need somebody to help us not get too creative.
Yeah, you can draw outside the line, but you can't. So here's how we extend the line to make sure we stay in. And so my ability to start with him about 10 years ago was just a great blessing, because it allowed me to get rid of that thing in my pit in my stomach that said, why am I being allowed to be able to do this for some people and not other people? It seems like I'm being handcuffed in the advice I'm being able to provide, or I need a little bit more expertise. And one of the great things with the firm is, we're not only working with Catholic clientele, but there is a strong Catholic presence, and people are strong in their faith, and certainly the morality. Like the morality is bar none, the relationship-oriented component. And the beauty of it is, as much as we have the integrated services that is on sort of a lot of the commercials, the expertise we have in the respective disciplines is unique. So there's no illusion of jack of all trades, master of none. When we have to do a deep dive, like my deep dive on the insurance, annuities, long-term care, financial planning, that's my deep dive piece of it. That's my role. I have opinions and input and perspective on the investment and, or to a lesser extent, the tax accounting component of it. But that's where, on that deep dive, that's where we call in Dan for my sniper skills in that environment. Our chief investment officer, he managed a family office. He was and it's funny, in a parallel way, he was used to chasing the 10th of a point of return, the 0.2 of a point return on different portfolios, because it was strictly corporate and there was no relationship. It was like, look, get us the 10th of a point or get out of here. And he was yearning for the relationship to say, hey, we're having an impact on people's lives here, whether it's their retirement, generational planning, family office services, et cetera. So that's when Jeff Silver came. He's our chief investment officer. Just if there's such a thing as too brilliant, he might be your guy.
That's not something I've ever heard. I've never been accused of being too smart.
Well, it's not. I'm sure it was not intended as an insult by anybody who forgot to mention that to you. Probably an error of omission, not an error of commission.
Oh man, how amazing! You sounds like you guys have a great team, and I love the integrated approach of how you can get into all aspects, right? So not just accounting, not just estate planning, not just wealth management, but all of it. So you can go to one place and get it all done. I'd love to hear more a little bit. There's a couple of things that you mentioned. What was it that made you, that pit of your stomach feeling? Because I think we've all had it. Any of us who were corporate exiles, we know the moment that we said, you know what, this isn't for me. And you mentioned, with you, it was a situation around, hey, we're buying gold, but don't you dare talk to anybody about gold. That's not part of what we do. The calls are being recorded, very meticulous notes, all that stuff. You kind of feel handcuffed, right? And I think that's what you mentioned. So you yearn to be able to go to a place where you could do what was best for the client. And just so happened that was at the same time that you're now the firm that you work for, that person was looking for somebody with your particular set of skills. There's always doubt. There's always maybe a little hesitation. We have our spouses to think about, wait, where are you going? What are you going to do? And how much, where's the stability? Because I think as men, I think we're always looking for that next adventure. And we forget that once we get to a certain age, the adventure part has to take a back seat and we have to start thinking of stability, right? But our wives never forget that. So tell us about how you came to that decision. I think that's important. If somebody's listening who's looking to, maybe they're in that same situation, they're in a financial firm where they're getting compensated really well and things are going well. They're taking vacations. They have their nest egg, everything's going right. But there's something in the pit of their stomach that's saying, you can do better, or you can do this differently. Tell us about that process for you. How did you evaluate it?
It was probably divine, as much divine divine intervention as much as anything on my part. I'd love to say it was intellectual discourse on my side, or discernment, but it was probably more divine intervention. The little pieces that were going wrong in the pit of my stomach, it wasn't certainly just one thing. There were, the product-oriented component. There were some restrictions on the product side that were problematic for me. And not just, it wasn't the product per se, as much as some of the accessibility of the product being restricted, as well as recommendations being tainted.
Right.
So that was certainly a piece of it. I think compensation wise, and actually cost to the client was problematic. So I sat with Mark. Now our nominal cost was, I was charging half what Mark was charging. I'm like, oh, aren't we great? And, sacrificing our compensation. But then I looked at our internal costs, and we were way more expensive, because some of the mechanisms inside of we're what's called an independent registered RA firm, an independent registered investment advisory firm. Our internal costs were de minimis, even in the management of the funds, because where the fund partly due to fund selection, some other components. So, and then there was personal conflicts as well of people that they were untoward. I think another piece for me in the broker dealer world, you are much more of a solo practitioner.
Right.
You might be on a team within this whole, but any of the big broker dealers,
Sure.
those firm structures, the greater BD can be doing great, but this team could be starving, and this team might be excelling, whatever those components might be. So I felt that when I'm within a firm, and to some extent we have that type of team set up internally,
Right.
but it's for the firm as a whole. When the firm does well, when the firm does well, everybody does well. That team environment is that was very attractive to me. I had a lot of peace with that, and it gives me the ability to say, look, I don't need the badge, I don't need the ribbon. It's good for the firm. It'll be, it'll all work. The rising tide, my mariner background, rising tide lifts all boats.
That's right.
If it's good for me, good for all. So that gave me a lot of peace. And it Mark and I, we were so close. He's a mensch. He's just a great guy. He does the right things for people. I could tell you, just little one-off stories to illustrate it, but it would make for a very boring podcast probably. But he's just a good person. I know his three boys. I knew through our personal relationship over time. They're great young men. His one son is in the business and working with us. Does a great job. Has a great attention to detail. Same work ethic. Same moral ethic. So all those things gave me a lot of peace. So it was almost just. It wasn't necessarily a fork in the road. It's just everything just flowed into this decision working well for me.
And it sounds, we mentioned during a break, we talked about the fact that it's a risk sometimes going to work with our friends. You and Mark had known each other for how long?
Oh boy, we know each other right now 50 plus years probably.
Yeah, so I mean that's a lifetime. And while it sounds like
since before the Knicks won their last championship.
Hey, by the way, that we'll have to talk about that story. But you go to work for someone who you've been friends for a long time. The risk is if things don't work out, then we're in a really tough situation. But you took that chance. Benefits, and you're obviously the benefit is you're working for a great guy, someone someone you've known your whole life. The way the firm is run matches who you are, and for you it better match because you're business development. You're out bringing in the new clients and things like that. How do you incorporate? Let's talk about that, because leading different is also one of the things you mentioned is the faith. Your faith plays a large part in what you do. and we'll get into your why operating system. For those of you that have been waiting for that, Dan literally took the assessment, the discovery right before the show, but we were looking at the results. As I heard your story, Dan, when we talk about right way and it's about doing the right thing, doing things that are going to yield results. There was something wasn't right where you were, and that didn't sit well with you, and it didn't make sense, right? That's his. So Dan's YOS is make sense, right way, and contribute. And I saw all of those components as you were telling that story. Number one, it didn't make sense what they were doing. And if it didn't make sense to you, you wanted to figure it out, and you had solutions. One of the things that's probably very frustrating for you is if you have a solution that nobody wants to pay attention to, right? You know how to do it. You know what needs to be done, but if they're not listening, sounds like Mark provides that kind of environment where, hey, there's another way to do it. Here's what makes sense. Let's implement it. So kudos to you on taking that leap and making it successful. You mentioned you know how to polish your shoes and shine your belt buckle. So you went to a maritime college, and that led to that first job on a tugboat in New York. Tell us about that experience and how that experience has shaped who you are today, Dan.
It gave me a lot of flex. It was interesting because it was a pretty good compensation model. It was a seagoing boat, so which meant that we worked 2 weeks on and 2 weeks off. And I would work, my shifts were 12 to 6, noon to 6, midnight to 6, which meant that at the end of my shift midnight to 6, I'd have breakfast. I'd go try to sleep or not, wake up, have lunch, midnight. So 6 a.m., I'd be getting off watch, have breakfast. Noon, I'd wake up, have lunch, sit my watch, have dinner, and go to sleep. And invariably, you sleep poorly in between one of those two watches.
Right.
And then, and every other Wednesday, we were doing a crew change. So, and the crew change, and this was well before cell phones. This is around 1985, 86, 87. It's that you get a phone call Monday night, be in Boston on Wednesday for a crew change, or be in Brooklyn. Our home port was Brooklyn, so be in Brooklyn for the crew change and find a way down there. My dad worked in the city at the time, so he was always getting a kick out of driving down to see the boat or whatever, cheat a little. He was a naval reservist, so him cheating a little sea time, quote unquote, was fun for him. In another way, I said, well, I was making plenty of money. I'm living at home. I paid off my student loans I put them on a 2-year schedule, cranked them down. And it also gave me the ability to work for my dad had his own business at home. He was a New York City school administrator professionally, but then he always had a side hustle. I mean, when I grew up, we installed appliances, we painted houses, we painted restaurants, we put solar panels on our own house in the, whatever year it was, 1980, plus or minus, climbing on a slate roof on probably a 30-foot high roof. Funny stuff. And then just I did a lot of plumbing, sweating pipes, whatever. So I had so much random work experience from my dad. But his side business actually at the time was more delivering drums of oil, 55-gallon drums of oil to work sites. And we'd be wrestling those puppies. I will tell you from that experience, antifreeze weighs a lot more than motor oil.
Really?
Because and I think the reason would be the antifreeze weighs just about the same as water, which is about 8 pounds per gallon, versus oil weighs about 5 pounds per gallon. So your 55-gallon drum, you're wrestling 400 plus 450 pounds. And they were funny 55-gallon drums. If you pivot them well and roll them correctly, and you have the construction delivery is a little tricky because you might have soft ground there. That's not fun.
Yeah, you might be on dirt.
You're delivering to a garage. I'm rolling on hard cement. It's a little better.
Right.
But there was and we started that business. Funny. My dad started that business with an Impala wagon, a 75 Chevy Impala wagon with the gate. You turn the gate.
Oh yeah.
The tailgate would come down. The window would go up. We had 2x6 planks. We'd roll 3 of those drums. God, those poor shock absorbers on those.
Oh man, you were scraping the ground.
Oh my God, it was so funny. It was funny.
450 gallons times 3, 450 pounds times 3. You were carrying the in New York Giants offensive line in your backseat.
It was crazy. It was crazy, but it was fun. It just, I think what sort of evolved from that and some of my boating experiences, you got to figure it out. It's almost like our family motto. My wife and I have 6 children. I married a saint. Nobody ever argues the point that I married a saint. That was before we had 6 children. But it's just, you got to figure it out. So whether, even with my dad's, those businesses, working on the boat, it's a little thing. Sometimes the crew change, you would just figure it out. You got to get to the boat in 36 hours, whatever the number was, or even any of those repairs. And generally on a tugboat, there aren't redundant systems. So there's some redundancy, but by and large, when things go sideways on a tugboat, you're getting to port pretty soon to go into the yard to get the repair.
Yeah. I love that your family motto is you got to figure it out. And Dan, I'm just always looking for these confirmations, right? So your why makes sense. People with the why of makes sense tend to be problem solvers. And just your family motto, what are the odds that somebody who loves to solve problems has a family motto of you got to figure it out? Give it to me. Let's figure it out. Give me the problem. Give me the data. Give me the information. We'll figure it out. We got to get to the port. And that's so good. Tell us a little bit more about, so you transition. New York real estate, you're a legend. It's just legendary. Those, and you worked at a time, like you said, there's no, you didn't look up everything online. You had to go knock on doors, get through gatekeepers and find the decision makers. That had to have been a fun time in your life. And you probably, when I'm thinking of the timeline, that's in the 90s.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I got into that business around 1988.
Yeah.
So the funny thing is, since I was reading the Wall Street Journal on the tugboat,
right.
The 1986 tax law changed the deductibility of the way depreciation expenses were written for real estate.
Right.
So before 1986, I will explain this poorly. I am not a tax accountant, but you could take so much of the expenses that a net loss real estate property is a net positive for your overall estate. So you didn't care about the profitability of the real estate package itself because of the tax write-offs you were getting on your overall wealth. So, and I know this, and I'm like this again. This is going to affect New York City these people don't get it now. And mind you, I went in as a commercial real estate broker. My compensation was 0. So the money I had saved from working on the boat, that was my money. I jumped in. I burned the boats, and I was all in. Yeah, it was insane. My mother's like, Danny, what are you? My mom doesn't like the risk like that. Irish Catholic, Brooklyn Irish Catholics, that's not the way they roll. So, although the funny part of that is I ended up with a large commission years later. She's like, Danny, that's too much money. How come they're paying you that much money? I'm like, Mom, that's because I got 0. Now, that's the risk reward profile, right? That we deal with so often in the entrepreneurial world. Yeah. But where was I with that?
Well, you were talking. We were going from the opportunity. I just asked, what was it like working in that environment? And you talked about, you just went all in, and where you ended up. And your mom was like, "What are you doing?" And then she thought you were making too much money.
Yeah, it was a bit of a shark pit. I had some very harsh. I got burned pretty badly on a couple of things, and I made some significant money. I do remember this one property. We had made an offer at. It was cheap. It was down on 23rd Street. It was like, I forget. He was asking $18 a foot. We offered him $17 a foot. He sat with the space empty for like 3 years at $17 a foot. They didn't, so I didn't look. People have reasons why doing things. I was not involved with the decision clearly, because we were representing the tenant in that transaction. So just fascinating sometimes the way they'll make those decisions. But it was very clear to me, since I was so green to the business, that the impact of pricing and everything and the 86 tax law on that market, they didn't feel it. They were oblivious to it. It took them longer to realize that the market was that soft. I would submit, right? Or it was a conscious decision that we don't care, right? And I don't know. I'm not in those boardrooms I was not in those boardrooms making those decisions, but I'm like, it hurts. So there was definitely a lull in the market for a while in commercial real estate, and largely sort of attached to the 86 tax law, because you had some buildings that ultimately were severely depressed.
Right. No, and one of the things that I'm hearing from you is once again, you were figuring some things out, getting out ahead of it. But what I'm hearing is you talked about, there were sometimes you got burned. There were some times that things didn't go as well. I like to think those, everything we do leaves residue. I had a Navy SEAL on the podcast, and he talked about they call it residue. The scars. The scars means you survived.
I like that word. I like the word.
The scars just mean you survived. And so you bring those scars to the financial services industry. And so you start with the large firm, and then tell us about, you got started there, you spent a few years there, and then you went to Mark Corrado after a while. What's the biggest difference that you saw in being in commercial real estate to going to that world? And what led to that decision?
Well, the commercial real estate world, you have an extraordinarily long sales cycle, and you need everybody to agree. I need buyer, seller, attorneys, accountants, architects, design, etc. All of that has to line up. So aside from a sales cycle, you have a lot of people influencing that decision. In the financial advisory world, generically, we're talking to decision makers individually, right? Husband, wife. That, there's a lot of studies which spouse might have more influence on a decision. It depends, right? And anytime you walk in, I'm like, it doesn't matter what the statistics say. It matters the two people in that room, whether it's a 50-50 decision, 90-10. And again, it's a critical piece, right? Knowing the decision maker, even with whatever your business is. When I was in commercial real estate, I need to work with a decision maker. Attorneys, law firms can be brutal, right? Because you have very smart people who all want input, who are deserve input, but ultimately they have to defer, right? And getting them to align. Versus on family planning issues, generically, you're hoping mom and dad are involved. When we're on the generational level,
right?
Grandparents, grandchildren, children, adult children who can be involved in the decision, helping with long-term care pieces, care for mom and dad, estate settlement, estate tax pieces. Those pieces can get very complicated. It does help with our approach that we have an accountant involved, we have an insurance guy involved, we have so much expertise in the respective by the respective professionals in the respective disciplines, not one. And I would probably defer. Mark's holistic knowledge surpasses my own. I like to push him once in a while, but it's I think, and even Lisa's technical knowledge is just off the hook. The way what she can bring to the table with that, and she likes the background. She just likes being the technician. But then she's coming up with some brilliant work for our clients, and it's key. And we see that a lot with business. So business owners, you got 3, 4, 5 business owners. They need someone they know that can bring all those pieces, bring the weight to the table. I think the pieces in going from the bigger the corporate, the broker dealer advisory business versus the fiduciary, where we work now as a much more independent fiduciary. Just to be clear, fiduciary response, like there's two standards, right? There's a best interest standard. Right. I do what I think is best for you, versus a fiduciary standard, which is I help you do what you would do if you knew what I knew. So I take my computer chip, I download it into you, and that's, you're going to basically do that for yourself because I just downloaded all my knowledge. That's sort of what one way of describing what the fiduciary relationship is.
Dan, I'm going to steal that because that's really what we do in coaching, right? We're not making decisions for you. We're going to, I love that. You're helping the client make the decision if they knew what you knew. So I'm going to give you what I know, and then you can make that decision. And I love that definition.
Yep. And then now the converse to that, to some extent, is my great friend Sal. You say, because when people sometimes they'll say they'll be a little too invasive on their knowledge that I can explain. Look, the criticism of me might be I'll go into the weeds with people on something, and then it's like, Dan, don't tell them how to make the watch. Just tell them what time it is, right? And so we have to hold me back from that. But sometimes clients want that. They want to know how to make the watch. I'm like, you really just want to know what time it is. And look, I love the detail. I do love giving the detail and sharing the detail and knowing the detail. But by and large, the client wants to, they want to drive the Porsche around the track. Yeah. They don't want to know, they don't know about the valve timing. They don't want about, they just want to drive the car around the track. And that's what we like to bring to the table for them.
I love that. And I think it's a great distinction between the two. Dan, what's we started because we met through, by the way, those of you listening, we'll put some information about the Tepeyac Leadership Institute in the show notes if you're interested in learning more about that process and that organization through which Dan and I met. But Dan, you talked about your faith. Tell us about your faith journey and how you come to work at a place where it's a part of everything that you do. And like you said, and it's just like myself, I don't work only with Catholics. I work with anyone who wants to be a better leader. However, my faith informs everything that I do. And I'm not afraid to say, Dan, hey, if you work with me, this is what you're going to get because this is what I believe. These are my beliefs. And if you're okay with that, we're going to get along just great. We're going to make miracles happen and we're going to help you be a better leader. You're going to say, hey, we're going to help you X. So tell me what role it plays and how it impacts what you do as a fiduciary.
Look, I think the morality around my faith is probably the base of it for for someone who's a generically secular client. Right. But trust is always the premier issue. Probably, I don't know where trust is not an issue for people in any working relationship, whether it's coaching, virtually any environment, right? There's got to be the trust issue. Yeah. And so I think that trust issue for me, and to some extent, look, I don't want to work with dishonest people any more than they should want to work with me in the event I was dishonest. So I think that piece with regard to having integrity, having a work ethic, giving people our best advice. I think within the firm, I think on the corporate advisor side, you can be a great advisor. Mm-hmm. You can absolutely be a great advisor. I do feel like sometimes those restrictions, those handcuffs, they make me cringe. And that being said too, like we have great relationships and great expertise, and some of our relationships are outside of the domain of our advice. We are very happily, gladly, and we'll say, that's not my expertise. Go to this guy. Right. And I'm not hamstrung by corporate saying, well, you can't send them over to that guy. That's not us.
Right. He's going to take our business. Right.
It's best. Yeah. It's best for the client. Let's roll with that. I think in our faith, I think ultimately my faith probably just lets me trust the process a lot more, to the extent that sometimes I don't feel, we want everyone. We want bet 1,000. We don't bet 1,000. Sometimes it's just not meant to be. And I do like to sometimes look back and say, why didn't that work? Was there a practical reason? Was there, not that I wear my faith rarely comes up probably in an explicit way. Right. Obviously, when I went to see Our Lady of Guadalupe, I was happy to share that with people. Right. I did have a friend. He says, Dan, why? I don't know how you. He did say, I think something like, you people. I don't know how you people live like that, just believing in your faith that it's going to work out. I'm like, well, and then what's funny about this particular instance was there were a lot of things that had transpired over the prior 24 months. Right. That had I told you they would, if I could have, miraculously go back and tell you, let me tell you what's going to happen over the next 24 months, you would have told me it was a miracle. I mean, you would have told some of these things that resolve themselves, let me say. And even I've seen that in my own life personally. I've seen it in our professional environment, and it's funny. I don't know. I can't. There was one expression. At some point, knowledge ends, and the faith is the rest of it, right? And God promises faith. He doesn't promise us knowledge. When I had a son that passed, it's like, this is God's will. I'm not like, thy will be done are four of the cruelest words in the Bible, and sometimes the most glorious words in the Bible, right? For my wife, my children, my grandchildren, some things that are the great blessings that we like to have in our lives. Thy will be done is pretty awesome. When thy will be done ends us burying people sooner than we'd like to bury them, or me not getting a deal, or something not working out in a manner that I had hoped it would. Well, it's also God's will. I mean, when you watch these championships, we're going to watch people raising trophies, right, in the next couple of weeks in the NHL and the NBA, and then well, it was God's will for the winners and the losers. I can't thank God for just my win. I need to thank God for the loss and that opportunity that loss presents. Right. I'm not as strong as saying, God, thank you for my suffering that I can offer this to you. That's what we're supposed to do, though. That is our faith, right? But I don't know that I'm going to do that. My daughter, she gets mad at me. She goes, I'm like, look, honey, nobody dies too young. It's like, what do you mean? I was like, nobody dies too young. When I die, that's when I'm meant to die. God had it. It was in God's perfect time. Now, God's perfect time has given me this many decades so far. I might have 2 or 3 more. I might have 1/10 of a decade left. Who knows? Yeah. But it's nobody dies young, and that's very. It's just true. And I sort of my Catholic faith. What I think about is just true. Jesus wasn't a mythical creature. We talked we've talked about the mystical body of Christ in some of our prior conversations. Right. We're all part of the mystical body of Christ. That means that, what? That guy I don't like, or the guy I do like, or that client who snubbed me, the person who was nice to me, the person who was mean to me, the person I crashed into last week in my vehicle. Fortunately, that didn't happen in reality. We're all part of the same mystical body of Christ. That can be that takes some processing, right? It means that, well, guess what? My neighbor, my enemy isn't. He's also part of the mystical body of Christ. And whether I need to praying for our enemies, and this is scripture, right? It's easy to pray for Dan Dominguez. He's a great guy. He coaches the people. He's helping them, but the murderous, the murderous driver, he needs our prayer. I see some of the awful news we see. Yeah. There's somebody's murder. There's a murder, right? We have a dead child, a dead, whoever it is, we have a dead child. Well, that the murderer, something went bad in their life. We don't have just one destroyed family. We have 2 destroyed families. We have 2 destroyed lives. Why? Why did it happen? Oh, bad question. God's intelligence is not our intelligence, right? Yeah. So why is never the question. It's, what? It's God's will. When we get upstairs, God willing, we go to the heavenly place versus the hotter place. God will have his explanation for us. Yeah. And look, when I see my son, I'm not going to say, oh God, why did you do this? I'm going to say, I just want to hug my son. I'm good to go.
Man, you said a lot there. Your 4-month-old son. How? What was his name?
Daniel Jr.
All right, Daniel Jr. So I love I think that's a great expression you just used. The fact that people we don't like. Abraham. One of my favorite quotes is Abraham Lincoln. He used to say, "I don't like that man. I should get to know him better." And you talk about when something terrible happens, like a murder, like a DWI, where somebody kills someone and they live. You're absolutely right. Not only do the victims need prayers, but so does the perpetrator, because they probably need them even more. than the person who the crime was perpetrated against, because they had no fault. There was no evil in them. If you do something really evil, like kill someone, like murder someone, you're the one that needs prayers. The person you murdered is probably going to be okay as far as eternal glory. And I love the image. I think when you have faith as you do, as far as what the final outcome is, and that beautiful scene of you and your son Daniel hugging and saying, "Hey, buddy, here's Dad. I'm here," right? And you can get to reunite. What a better motivator to make sure we're living life right, so that we get that reward, right?
In case I needed any of that, thanks for making that explicit for me, Dan. Yes, amen, amen, amen.
That is such a great testimony. So I really appreciate it, Dan. And it's got to be tough. How many kids total do you have?
We have 6, 3 boys, 3 girls. We're actually going to be moving near we have 2 grandchildren. No dogs. My wife's working on me to refill the dog dog couch. But we're going to be moving to North Carolina in the near future to be near near our grandchildren. We hope if we had my druthers, my children could pick a spot on the map, and we just want to be right next door to all of them. We'd have a big compound. Actually, when I was in at Our Lady of Guadalupe with the pilgrimage with Tepeyac, met a gentleman from Spain. And what was interesting, he was shaking his head a little bit. He goes, that's crazy about America. He goes, you people spread out. Your family is spread out so much. He goes, I live down the block from where my parents live and my siblings, like they all live in the same neighborhood. I'm like, oh, I would love that. I would love that. Now, maybe my children moved far away from me for a reason.
Right.
One never knows. But and we love hanging with our children. We just love. My son did the Lake Placid Ironman a summer and a half ago, year and a half ago that summer, and we got a place. We were all staying in one place. They're just so much. They're fun. They're intelligent. They're smart. Shockingly, they're sarcastic. Maybe not shocking. Who knew it was in your DNA? Who knew sarcasm was a step in the DNA molecule?
It's in the strand, I guarantee you.
So, we wish we'd be in our glory just to have them all in one place. We just love having them around. They're great people.
That's true. And your friend from Spain is absolutely right. I've got a daughter in Chicago with 2 grandkids, and I wish her and Ivan, every time a house goes up anywhere near my neighborhood, I send them the link, and they've got great jobs and they're doing really well. And I got to see them a couple of weeks ago, but we miss that from, going back to the old days where families didn't move away from each other, and the opportunities you did what Dad did, right? So you just entered the family business. So why would you want to move away? And that's what you did.
So towards that end, so I went to church. I go to church currently, which we're going to be moving 900 miles away. But I go to church currently in the same parish, and I've either been in this parish or the neighboring parish since 3rd grade. So I had my first communion in Brooklyn, and then we moved up to Monroe, New York. Every Sunday of our marriage, sometimes to the not always to my wife's distinct pleasure, because Sunday morning it was breakfast with Grandma and with my parents, with Nan and Papa, and her parents were around for a bit, but then they'd moved. But my parents, every Sunday it was church and breakfast after Sunday Mass. And I think what's fascinating about that, one, with having quite a few 6 children, my children each have 5 sibling relationships. Right. So if you have 2 children, I'm blessed. I'm just totally blessed. But they have 5 sibling relationships, which is crazy, right? But the other piece, which is interesting about going with seeing my parents every week after Mass, was that my children saw me not as just a dad and obviously as a husband, but as a child, right? Mm-hmm. So my I just love getting at it with my parents, generically when we argue, we're probably arguing in agreement on how much better I can make the point that we agree on versus you can make it.
We agree, but we're going to argue.
Yeah, we agree, but I think my point makes it truer than your point makes it true.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so I think it was such a blessing for 50 plus whatever 40 our whole marriage, 35 years. And it was just a blessing. And my wife just saintly. And when you're the mother of I'm sure any of the moms listening or you just do figure it out. You do there isn't any other family model you have, because there's just things like I can't be in 6 places at once. Right. So you do have to figure out. And I do love, I think moms are just, if men had to give birth to children, there'd be one generation before we'd be done.
Right.
Okay?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I have witnessed childbirth, and I can tell you, I'd probably do it once.
Yeah. It's not happening again. The love, the protection, I think, that when moms are special for a reason.
Yeah. No, that's so true. Dan, let's finish with the question I ask every guest. And thank you so much for sharing so openly. Love that. I mean, I'm picturing a tremendous, first of all, kudos. The fact that you love your kids, they love you, and you guys like to hang out. There's so many people that don't have that. And so we'll pray for them, but
Amen.
Let's just say a prayer for the family you built, you and your wife. What's your wife's name?
Sharon.
For you and Sharon and the family that you've built, and your kids, and for little Daniel who's watching over you. But I always ask this question because I like to hear, whether it's, whether it was in your time as a sailor, your time as a realtor in the real estate business, or your current job. What does it mean to you to lead different? What is it when you noticed, hey, that guy, he leads differently, or Dan Rosaschi leads different by doing this? What does it mean to you to lead different?
Interesting. Something we talk about that's been prominent in the Tepeyac Leadership Initiative, and our friend Christopher Pereira wrote about. And I don't know if you've read his book, but it was excellent. But leadership is often defined by leadership is how you lead. Well, that's not. You can't be using the word in the definition, right? Wasn't that like the fourth grade mantra? The nature of leadership is ultimately, like Christ himself, it's about service. It's service of not to overstate my Christ likeness, right? But it's being in service to others. And when you're in service to others makes for great leaders. I just don't think you can ever think of somebody said, oh yeah, they were a great leader because they, forced somebody to do X or Y. It's not forcefulness. It's service to others. I think the nature of the way my life works now, personally and professionally, when we're able to provide service, not with restrictions, not with handcuffs, not with barriers, knowing what we can do as a firm for people, knowing what we know we can't do, and say, well, we can't do that, but we can provide guidance or get you in a direction that can help you accomplish with that. And I think sometimes that service means no, right? Helping people know when and how to say no for themselves in their own lives, whether it's a financial decision, a business decision, a child decision, or saying no to mom and dad, you're not going to drive the car anymore. Any of those pieces, helping people do that. That service piece of it, I think, really is fulfilling for me. And I think, when I just thinking in my mind at the moment about the people around the firm that I work with, and even just my children, they randomly tell me how they're volunteering here, volunteering there, helping a friend in random ways. It just makes your the heart in your chest burst. Burst that, what kind, gentle people that I'm fortunate to have in my family members, my siblings too. I see it all the time. They're in service organizations, and sometimes they parallel in ways. I'm like, that they were doing similar things to what I was doing. I'm like, I didn't even know they were doing it. And we find out a few years later, we were on such similar tracks. So seeing them out with so many people in my life, do think that service piece of it is it's so critical. It's what it's all about. Because then you're helping out each other professionally. If it puts a shekel in your pocket, great. And personally, if it gets me a few shekels for St. Peter to get me through the gates, I'll take that as well.
And another tooth on your key, right?
Yeah, one can only hope.
That's fantastic. Dan, it has been such a pleasure to spend some time with you. Some great advice and some great stories that we've heard from you. I love the thought of leadership as service, and it's the reason I'm part of, because I believe in that. I think, and you said it great. Leadership is not about you. It's about the people you're leading. And Absolutely. So there's a difference between managing and leading. And it's a totally different place. And I think you're coming at it from the right angle in terms of when you're put in the leadership is a gift. It's a people business too. And it's not it's not numbers. It's not about,
it really is.
It's about how are you helping those people become the best version of themselves so that they can one day take advantage of the position that you're in, because somebody has to fill it in, right? And you're not going to be around forever. And
yeah, we're fortunate because the firm's built for, we have the succession plan in place, and it's just exciting. It's an exciting time. We think about with people with the AI, it has people all flutter. It's like, hold on, folks. Yeah. We'll all be okay. Yeah, it's in God's hands.
We use AI. We're trying to take advantage of as much as we can. But what we're finding is it just makes us more efficient and more effective, not less need. We need more humans to handle the AI. We need better humans. And I think the better we embrace it, I think the more AI does, the more important the human connections become.
Yeah. Well, and Mark and Lisa laugh about this when accounting software came out. It's like, oh, you guys are going to be done. No more taxes.
Yeah.
Business exploded. And of note, I'm not sure if you're aware, AI, the word AI, capital AI, it is a place in the Old Testament.
Really?
Yes. Of course, you can't look it up. You can't look it up because
you can look.
But yes, I can't even tell you more about it. I am not a great scripture. I process it. This may be, you probably could tell this about me with knowing what you know now. But I process it, but I can't give you all the details about it.
No, you need enough information to get the answer. But then once you've got that, you're not digging any further, right? No, it's funny. I had Father Michael Garcia was on, and he's big into AI, and he's, obviously the Pope just issued an encyclical on AI. But before that, he sent me a text. Father Michael sent me a text. Hey, did you see the encyclical? Because one of the things he said on the podcast, you can't spell faith without AI.
Amen.
And
I love it.
There's so many ways. I think we have to embrace it. We have to do the internet. Can you imagine anybody right now saying, "Oh no, we're not doing the internet"? Because when the internet came out, it changed business, right? Yeah. And it changed connectivity. It changed the way we do everything. And I think AI is that next step. And so we have to embrace it and make good with it.
We're incorporating it into a lot of our business, but in a very targeted way, so that it doesn't. There's been AI trading models that have not worked out well.
Yeah, we're not going to.
Let's put it mildly.
For sure. Well, Dan, we're going to put all your contact information. If somebody wants to talk to you, learn more about what you do, about your firm, and is interested in working with you, how do we get a hold of you? What's the best way to find Dan Rosaschi?
Corrado Financial Group.com is our website. I am on LinkedIn. You can find me there. We always welcome conversation. It's fun. We didn't talk about this, but we like coachable people. I'm sure you love working with coachable clients.
Yes.
Like coachable people. Like if you can go online and you can do your investments, and sure. you'll be, if you're disciplined and you can smart, and you might do better than us. But if that's what you want to do, we're not your guy. You don't want to work with us. If you're like, you know what? I just want to drive the Porsche around the track. I don't want to have to change the oil. I don't want to have to change the belts. I don't have to do the maintenance on it. Then we'd love to have the conversation. We find the family office services component for the higher net worth people is really a strong part for us. But people are getting into retirement. They really want to protect their downside.
Right.
Our vehicles are wonderful, but I'm always open to conversation. People want to talk about their faith and or their lives. It's about just making sure we're in service to others. And I think as a parent, as you know, you really feel like you just want to be in service to your family.
Yeah.
Right.
That's good
That's
stuff.
because those are the ultimates and service to Christ.
Fabulous, Dan. Thank you so much for being on today. We really appreciate you guys. If you learned anything new, if you learned something that you hadn't thought about, please comment. Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to share the podcast, share Dan's information, share it with your friends, subscribe, like, and comment so that we can get the message on how to lead different to more people across the world. Thank you so much for being on, Dan. What do you say we end the show on that note?
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, brother.
So much, Dan. We'll talk to you soon. I look forward to our next conversation. I think we meet once a month, so that's great. I know I'm going to see you probably before then because I know you've got questions about your results. So we'll answer those.
Great.
Have a great week, everyone, and we'll see you next week on the Lead Different podcast.
Thank you.
This is Lead Different.
Subscribe now. Discover a new era of leadership. Lead different because great leaders change the world.